being 2 minutes after 12, we'll go ahead and I'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Kathy McCoy, Lorraine Gouget, Mark Heller,
Yes.
Grant Gerber,
Yes.
Andy Alvarado,
Yes.
Mike Waller,
Here.
Free Schumann, Doug Rotek,
Here.
Bruce Paquette,
Here.
Katie Bellinger,
Here.
Ryan Reed, John Yackel, Lane Smith, Marsha Savitsky, and Julia Lyon. Here. Here you go.
We'll stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Certification of compliance.
This meeting has been noted to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Everybody had a chance to review the agenda. Any corrections or changes needed? Motion to approve.
Make motion to approve or.
Second.
I'll second, Julia.
Motion and a second. Further discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Public comments. Any comments are limited to 3 minutes.
Anybody have anything? No, no one online.
No comments. Everybody had a chance to review the minutes from last month. Any additions, deletions, or corrections needed?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of last month.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Jail report update.
Do we have the report there?
It was
The March jail report. There was 74 inmates the day of that report. Our average daily population ran at 70 with approximately 14.5 to 55.5 males. Average probation incarceration was 11, which is approximately 16% of our population. Average pre-sentence incarceration was nearly 47, 66% of our population, and average sentence inmates around 12.5, which is nearly 18% of our population. We currently have 1 on electronic monitoring and housing 15 females in Barron. During the month of March, there were 13 inmates that were booked that we have employed at the time of arrest. 61 of those inmates are unemployed. Our current unemployment rate is at 82.4%.
You know, how we doing on hiring?
Looking good. Monday, we are interviewing 3 females, so that's promising. So we currently have there are 3 part-timers currently. 1, I believe, will be leaving for the road academy. He'll transition to the road here, leaving us with 2. One of those females I'm hoping to see in a full-time spot here in the near future. So
What do you need back in order to bring the things?
we would have to have a female on every rotation, which currently we don't have. So
and we are assertively looking at taking care of that to bring our females back.
How many more do you need to have enough females to have on?
I believe we were missing 4 staff, 3 females and 1 male at the time. So, and currently, like I said, we're interviewing 3 on Monday, and we currently have 1 female part-timer as it is. So hoping by mid next week, things will be looking really good. So
And then you have, we have 1 coming back. Is that for a couple months yet?
Uh,
Daily?
Yeah, June 1st, I'm being told possibly, so. And that's not counting the 4, so I mean, if I'm counting that feeding, well, then it would be 5, but currently we have 4 vacancies.
And even if we could fill those with part-time females to make sure it's stable, we're going to do that. Any other questions about the jail report? Moving on to criminal justice coordinator.
So, as previously asked, I did email Lynn our numbers. Currently for pretrial, we're at 91. We have 30 on court reminders only. We have 12 on diversion. We have 8 who are pending referrals for diversion. We have 17 who have completed diversion. We have 4 who are eligible for diversion right now. We have 1 that's pending review for hearing for a failed diversion. And 1 who is possibly pending review for a failed diversion. We have 55 on our wait list. And as I stated last month, we're taking people off of our wait list. So that's why our pretrial numbers have increased from last month. And so we're working our way through our wait list. We have 15 new bonds pending, and we have our new hire, our pretrial case manager, Carter Schaefer, which is going to help. He's not taking on new cases yet, but we intend for him to take new cases in about 2 to 3 weeks. So that will help us also start taking on new cases again. You want me to elaborate on anything else?
Any other questions for Becky?
I know that there's been some questions in the past about electronic monitoring, and we have had discussions about that in the past month, and we have some ideas and some progress moving there. It has slowed down, and I will take responsibility for that because we have a lot of changes going on in our office, but there is progress moving there. So hopefully there's a little bit of changes coming for that. But we're working on it.
But the other thing I'll add too is, it's the progress there. It's not as bad as it looks because we only are able to do the post sentence,
Right,
and that's pretty minimal.
right. So we're working on some changes, but that takes time. So it's just, we ask for some grace with that. Andy?
Just for fun of asking questions. I know we've talked about monitoring and it's post sentence. Is the purpose of monitoring bracelet just to track them down if you can't find them, or is it to determine what they're doing with their time? Like if they're restricted from going into bars, it tells you if they're
That
going.
and with the accountability,
Yeah, you can do that.
they all have Huber, so they'd be able to be out to work.
Well, could you put a monitoring bracelet on somebody it's part of a diversion agreement?
We could, if that is going to be helpful, but there has to be stipulations in place, and that's part of what we're exploring. So right now, there's no policies and procedures that we have for those conditions. So we have to look at what we have to offer those people. And if they don't have a job, then they're basically just, it's geography. And then how do they pay for that, for those services? So, the cost is fairly significant.
Mhm.
So that's what we're looking at to address.
And then you mentioned the jobs, and the sheriff's talked about the unemployment rate. So where does it fall in? I mean, what do we need? It seems like there's an opportunity there for us to do some type of job training, mentorships, throw them on a bus and send them to any number of employers that need employees? How do we attack that?
So right now we work with, we work with Pathways to Home, that's through Northwest. The Northwest Workforce Investment Board, but we also work with Northwest SEP. And so this is where the sheriff said that right now it's only post-conviction, but we're also hoping to look at like some pre-trial options. But I also need to look at working with the Economic Development Committee and see what options we have there. So it's just gonna take time.
Okay,
So we have plans. It's just we haven't explored all of those options yet.
okay.
And there are quite a few programs
Well, there,
implemented here and
yeah, there's a lot of programs for training, and I have experience working with like Flammable Correctional. Like we were, even though that's a treatment center for the prison system, we had employers that would, they had some people that could go out and work. I think the Gordon Center is actually a work release site, but the employers, they were willing to take prisoners in, but they didn't want to deal with the prisoner aspect. So as long as the prison handled, behavior issues or anything that happened at work, employers were willing to participate. So like, it's almost like I feel like we need somebody to, people on diversion or people that are on Huber, provide them transportation and somebody to manage them. And I think there are employers that would take them in then. And then they're, as part of their diversion or their sentence, maintaining employment is just a condition of that. But I don't know. I mean, SEP has programs, but they're kind of like job training, or they're not really.
Skills training.
Yeah, they provide some training, but they really don't provide them the
The supervision,
supervision part,
right?
the accountability piece.
So when people are on diversion, depending on what their case plans are, some of them have employment as part of their case plans. They don't all, depends on what their risk needs assessments come up as. So if it depends on, if their risks and needs don't match that, then that's not part of their case plan. I know that we can sit at this table and say that jobs are all extremely important, and I'm not saying that they aren't, but if somebody has a risk and needs that are higher in some areas, we can't over program them and say you have to get a job if they have risks and needs that are higher in some areas. So if they have like AODA and mental health and some other things that they need to overcome before getting a job, forcing them to get a job, they're not going to end up being successful in maintaining that job anyway. So they're going to have to overcome all of these things before they can get a job. Does that make sense?
No, I would say that's like Flambeau Correctional. That's the same thing. We had to go, if they had treatment or they had counseling, that all had to happen first.
Right. And so that's what we do with those assessment tools, is we determine what are the highest needs and we tackle all of those first. And so wherever employment is in there, some people do have to get jobs as part of their case plans, but other people don't.
And then so if they have, I mean, I understand like the risk, they have to address the needs first, but then when they get a job, how do you make sure they're accountable to
They meet with their case manager.
case manager has charge of doing that?
Yep.
Okay. Do they have problems with employers wanting to take them out if they've got those other?
Well, and that's where I said I wanted to ultimately meet with like the Economic Development Committee, because I think that there's a lack of communication with employers and what's to be expected and like accountability pieces and what can be done when people aren't showing up for work, and especially if they're on some sort of supervision. There's employers can contact those case managers and say, you know what, they're not showing up for work, they're not doing this, they're not doing that, and those case managers can follow up with those things.
We'll talk about that. I'm not sure the Economic Development Committee is gonna be much help to you. I hear what you need though.
go ahead, Mark.
How many Hubers do you currently have? What looks like
Hubers?
Hubers,
I think we may have had just one, I think.
I'm looking at the thing here.
And that's part of the problem that we run into is that there's not a lot of eligibility
Right.
with the inmates.
Mhm.
And we've
So-
talked about that too. And that's why we were going to explore like pretrial options, but we need to put policies and procedures in place before we can look at that.
It's like, it sounds like you're working it.
There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes.
Could I just add one thing?
Yeah.
About 5 years ago, we brought a grant, when I was at WITC, we secured a grant to bring a construction carpentry certificate here. You were showing them.
Construction.
And that was, yep, then that was done and they built a shed over it,
New reflection.
new reflections,
Yep,
and I
I
don't
was
know if
involved.
WITC, or I can call it WITC Northwood, doesn't have any more grant funds available to pursue.
Was the grant directly through Northwoods Tech?
Yes.
Well, I certainly can reach out to them and see if they have any opportunities.
And I've got a contact for that person.
Okay,
I'm related to the president
What's that?
of Northwood. It's my cousin's husband. I can message him. He's wanting to partner with things as I talked with him, so there might actually
John.
be some, yeah, John, Will.
He'll get you in touch with them.
Perfect.
okay, yeah, that would be great.
Thank you. Anything else? Anybody have any additional questions? We'll move on to Health and Human Services report. Thanks, Becky.
Joyce is gonna come up. She's been doing a lot of the coordination with all the work we're doing related to substance misuse.
Yeah, so we've spent a lot of time working with the Prevention Coalition. So there was a Prevention Coalition just for LCO and a separate one for Sawyer County. We've combined those two coalitions and we've met and written up a new charter, a new mission statement. Our next meeting is going to be to start recruiting more members. We have 12 different sectors that we would like to be represented, everything from youth, parents, healthcare, substance use, and obviously, state, local, tribal government organizations, youth serving organizations. We have a whole list. So we've been slowly getting input, not just us, but also on the LCO side. So we're between all of us throwing a lot of names in there, and then we're going to need to figure out who all we think we can get invited and that may participate. We think it's very important for us to be working together and not duplicating efforts or wasting time, again, doing something that may not be in conjunction with each other. So we're all very excited. We think this is going to actually be a thing. So.
And I'll just add, the important thing about having that prevention coalition is not only to be driving the work and really identifying the gaps, but if you don't have one that's functioning well, you're not eligible for writing grants. So we want to be able to get funding in outside of any funding that we already have, that we have to make sure that these are well functioning coalitions.
Right. We've also been promoting the Drug Take Back Day. So April 21st and 22nd are going to be Drug Take Back Day in Hayward and LCO. That is more of on a law enforcement Drug Take Back Day. We'll have another one in September when we do Clean Sweep. But so we've been advertising that quite a bit. We also became, we're now qualified for Narcan Direct. So we can give training on how to give Narcan, and we can also provide Narcan to people, organizations who need it. So we're currently looking for different organizations that may be interested in getting that training. There will be something going out to all Chamber of Commerce people, letting them know that we have that training available and why it's so important. We also met with law enforcement from across the county to talk about where needle drop boxes should be. We've gotten a lot of feedback that there's needles everywhere. So we're also working on figuring the best locations to put some of those needle boxes and best type of box to have in those locations. So that's in the process. We also met with the Food Share Employment and Training program. What we're mainly looking at is for those people who are being released from prison who are not on supervision, and a way to get them hooked up before they walk out the door. So it's a process that's in progress right now. We're working on it, but we're trying to find a way to help these people become employed so that maybe they don't have to go back to the same situation that they were in the first place. At least try to start addressing some of the social and economic factors that are around the drug use in the community. I think that's all. Anything else?
The last thing I can know is, the Healthier Together Coalition also has initiatives that, we're moving forward. That's part of our community health improvement plan. And right now we are meeting with, schools to really identify what all is out there for prevention education, for the kids, and where they're identifying gaps and what type of services or what additional support is needed to be able to improve prevention efforts. So that's currently happening as well. You're fine. As far as youth justice report goes, I will meet with Sarah and see if we can have her coming to the meeting in the future.
Thank you. Anything else? Anybody have any questions for them?
I have a comment though, but I, you know, that as far as prevention goes, I think that you just mentioned getting them hooked up with, you know, when they come out, getting hooked up with someone, but like not getting back into that situation, that bad situation.
Right.
To me, that's in a sense part of prevention,
Yeah.
and that's a very, very big part of this whole thing.
We're applying for an AmeriCorps recovery coach that can also help bring recovery coaching programming into the county. So that's
Is there a high population of people getting out of prison that aren't on supervision?
I don't know what the numbers are. We still have to gather all of the data for that. We're trying to plug the holes. Is what we're trying to do. So I don't know how many of the people coming out actually in the next few months here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
jail.
Yeah.
I'm looking at jail.
Okay,
And
sorry.
And part of it is, there's a plan in progress. I will be going into the jails to interview people who have had drug histories, to collect more information and try to get a little bit more geographically centered idea of what's going on here, instead of just relying on all of the studies and everything else that we see. We want to hear from them directly about what's going on.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you both. Community service. Grant?
Right now over at House of Hope, they're finishing up everything in the workshop. Where then the guys will be learning the trade skills of woodworking again, and there's also a bay over there so they can learn like some small mechanics and things like that. And we're also starting putting more effort into the mentorship part of the program over there, so that the guys will be partnered up with men that are already in the community and things like that. There's a nice little group. We just had our first meeting trying to, you know, it's kind of like the jail, that next step from going from the house to, you're still in the program for 6 months after leaving the house, but you're on your own. So that's where we're getting more of a, you know, trying to get more mentors in there to actually help the guys with that process, you know, start hanging out with them more, just kind of coming to the morning meetings and things like that if they can, or taking them hunting, or not hunting, but like fishing, or, you know, out into the woods, camping or something, just kind of easing them back into like a normal life a little easier and things like that. So hopefully there's going to be bigger steps in there, and always looking for more guys if anybody knows any that would like to, you know, just seeing that, you know, it helps if they just kind of feel like they're part of something too, you know, not getting kind of ostracized by people when they go out into society then. So, but where we're at over there,
Thank you.
any questions?
Nothing else? Thanks, Grant.
Mhm.
Future agenda items.
Future agenda item, but also maybe a question for Becky. If you touched on this and I wasn't listening, to be honest with you.
He's not.
So,
Like that's the story of my.
yeah. So we have a second judge. In theory, so when do you think we'll be engaging on treatment court and really firing that thing up?
I'm actually kind of glad you asked.
I reached out to her and offered for her to accompany us to WATCP. But she was indisposed. So she will not be joining us for that. So aside from that,
Do we have a clear idea of the two judges, what the role of the judges will be in the treatment court, like which judge or both, or,
I would say that's probably going to be up to them.
okay,
They can duke that out.
okay. I didn't know if you had been told already or there'd been.
For lack of a better word. Yeah.
Okay, they're gonna fight over it, that's awesome.
Well, Judge Yackel is coming to WATCP.
Okay,
But she will not be, so, you know, but there are specific requirements for treatment court. So,
so if you had to guess, when do you think you'll have a treatment court participant?
I would, January is,
Okay,
yeah, I mean, that's realistic,
Okay.
is when we'll have participants. We would like to see participants, you know, later this year, but I think that's realistically, it'll be January.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else for future agenda items?
And realistically, we're listening. I don't know about him.
Anything for correspondence, reports, or conferences?
Well, almost our entire treatment court work group is attending WATCP, and we have 4 people attending NADCP in June. Which
Maybe
is,
you want to explain the acronyms.
yeah, WATCP is the Wisconsin Association of Treatment Court Professionals, and that's in Wisconsin Dells. And NADCP is the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, and that is in Houston. Actually, Lieutenant is coming to both. And like I said, pretty much our entire work group for treatment courts, Katie is coming to WATCP. Anna is going to WATCP. Judge is going to WATCP. Of course, Heather is, because she's our treatment court coordinator. I am going to both. Jennifer from the DA's office, Jennifer Gross, is going to WATCP. I think she's going to NADCP. Do you remember? I think she's going to NADCP. You're going to, no. Judge Smith is going to WATCP.
Sounds like you got a pretty good group going.
Yes, Regine from North Lakes is going to WATCP. I can email you a list. Right off the top of my head, I'm losing. But we also have some people who are attending virtually, like the standards and practices. So that's like the foundational procedural methods. Lieutenant, anybody that I'm missing? Can you think of anybody?
Excuse me, nothing but I can think of.
Just don't lose them while you're there. And this, I promise this will be my last question. So between Julia and Becky, like, there's these monies coming out from the state, and I know Julia sent out the one about was it opioid abatement efforts by law enforcement agencies, and it includes pre-arrest and pre-arraignment deflection programs. So just, are we, who's gonna be staying on top of these, or?
Yeah.
or-
We've reached out, we're gonna connect and get Lieutenant involved in that conversation.
The pre-arrest, the law enforcement diversion.
It's that, the whole grant,
Yeah.
there was a lot in there.
So,
There's a lot in there.
and we are, so that's the one that Nikki and I talked to you about also, the protect and connect.
I think
Is
it's
that-
different.
Is that the different one?
I think that's different. Yeah.
It's different.
So we are also applying for the protect and connect, the one that Justice Point is applying for. That's due by the end of April for the law enforcement diversion. So that's separate from
That's
that one.
different, yeah, this one's.
But we are
separate.
applying for that one.
Okay.
And that's due at the end of April. That will fund 3 positions.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we do have it on the radar and we will get that meeting set up.
You'll corral these guys
Yeah.
and whatever you
Yeah.
need from them.
And we have met.
That's the advantage of having Joyce around. She
Yeah.
keeps
Okay.
us focused.
And we have met, on the law enforcement side of things, we have met about the law enforcement diversion one.
Okay.
We just haven't met again after the initial meeting because the grant itself has not crossed my desk, so I don't know the specifics of what has to go into it. But that is the one that we need the letter of support from you when it goes in.
Okay.
So we will be in contact about that.
And I know did you get access to CCAPs yet, or is it happening?
No, not yet. That kind of went to the bottom of our priority list because right now we run weekly CCAP checks and we were trying to get around doing that, but we're just going to continue doing that until we get past this other stuff. Like the grant is really a priority right now and our data software transfer is priority. So we'll deal with the CCAP stuff for now.
We'll start putting together a monthly report of grants that have come up and whether we're deciding to apply for them or not. Just so that we can kind of be aware of what's there and keep us on track for making sure we get them turned in time.
And then I think for a future agenda item, I'd like to invite the youth justice person from Social Human Services who's really taking things in a good direction, I think. So you guys hear what she's up to.
Julie said that.
What? Yes, I did. He really wasn't listening.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm not.
Well, at least you know, I know what you're not listening to.
I didn't say. last time I was gonna have it.
absent for the meeting.
Second. This is trying to prove that great minds. think alike.
Anything else? Hearing none, with nothing else on the agenda, we're adjourned.